like to introduce Geraldine Pamphile, VP, Media Distribution and Merchandising, NBC Asia. Please come on up, Geraldine. Next, I'd like to introduce John Vamvakitis. John is Director of Content Partnerships, APAC at Google. John, please join us. And Ken Mandel. Ken Mandel is the Managing Director, Asia Pacific, HootSuite. And last and definitely not least, my good friend, Keith Timimi, Chairman, VML Qais. Come on up, Keith. It seems like every year we get to do a really fantastic panel towards the end of the second day, and this is no exception. We're going to take social media and sports into a perspective of how you then understand millennials' behaviors, platforms, activities, actions, and strategies, and really kind of make them happen for your brands, for your companies, for your businesses, for your fans. So I'd like to understand a little bit more. Geraldine, we were talking about the global nature of sports social. When we say that, people, they don't really get a sense of how big it is. Can you talk to us just about your perspective, maybe some of the activities that you have going on regionally that you're very excited about?
Well, you know, at the NBA, because I'm actually working for the NBA, not NBC, we have, as of today, you know, somewhere close to 660,000 million between followers and likes.
I'm sorry, how many?
660 million.
660
followers
million.
and likes, you know,
Wow.
across the globe. That's across, you know, the NBA handle, also the handles of our team and of our players, the entire ecosystem. If we put that into numbers, it's pretty much, you know, that would put us at the third countries after China and India, or somewhere close to that. So when we talk about global and magnitude and capacity, it's actually gigantic. For us, it's absolutely to be where our fans are and having that, you know, back and forth discussion with them, giving them, you know, the full experience, and it's all about storytelling and how do we engage with them and giving them, you know, first and foremost the inner arena experience, and particularly here in Asia where we are, you know, the game are being played in the US in the morning time. But also, you know, being able to be with our team when they get ready in the locker room. Of course, during the game, we are taking over because they're not supposed to tweet, they're supposed to play. And then after that, you know, they're going back into the bus with the team and they will be in the charter home back home. So it's all this ecosystem that comes together, but first and foremost for us to be exactly where our core segment is.
Yeah, that's excellent. You have some things that you're also doing locally as well?
Absolutely. So we have, you know, interestingly enough, in all those numbers, in Asia, we happen to have, you know, our first country outside of the US, as far as Twitter and Facebook is concerned, is actually the Philippines. You know, we have our top 4 and 5, you know, cities in the world. 4 of them happens to be in Asia. Jakarta being our 4th largest city in the world for Twitter, just after New York, LA, and Chicago. I mean, you know, if you think about it. So, you know, it's for us an extraordinary, you know, opportunity to talk with those fans. And partially, I think, this was mentioned this morning by Ward. You know, when we are in market where pay TV and is not so much, you know, widely distributed, we are exactly where our audience is. So accompanying what our broadcasters are doing, we are able to keep on growing the popularity of the game and feeding our fans with what they want to hear about.
Oh, it's very good to hear that. John?
Yes, James?
Although we hear some millennials don't have Facebook accounts, which probably is very heartening, we often see people having the wrong impression about the right way to approach a sports social strategy. They tend to think of the platforms. And I know that with NBA, they have great activity across all different channels. But when you think about a winning sports strategy, what would you recommend to the people in the audience today? How would you approach it?
Wow, good question, James. You should have told me that before when we were rehearsing. I don't think there's any one cookie cutter answer or one strategic approach that works. I think what you need to do if you're a league, federation, or a sport network is open your mind to the fact that social can emanate from many sources. It can emanate from a messaging service itself. It can actually emanate from search. It can emanate from a product like YouTube or any content distribution point. we've seen numbers that put about 77% of people while watching TV are on either a laptop or a mobile or a tablet, right? So 77% are on some kind of other device. And we've also found there's about 40% peak search traffic on Google during prime time. So people are watching television, perhaps still, but also doing something else at the same time. So I think you need to be able to think about where the potential entry points are for your league, your federation, and then try to exploit across as many different potential partners and platforms as you can. I don't think there's any, you may as well take the Starbucks approach and try and put a coffee shop on every corner. I mean, it doesn't hurt. There's no real, I don't think anybody has the actual answer completely yet. You have to get out there and trial and error. I think some groups have done, a better job, like the NBA, but I think they've done a lot of trial and error too, and they've had to iterate, and that's kind of what you have to do.
See, you handled that just fine. So given the fact that actually it's higher than that, it's 85% of sports fans are engaged in social media while watching sports on TV, 85%. The one that really cracks me up is that 63% of sports fans in the stadium are active on social media while at the stadium, which I think I wanted to remind them how much those tickets cost. Put the phone down. But Ken, we looked at it and we discussed some of the approaches for sports and social in the region. Given the fact that so many fans are live and active in social media while sports is happening, what do you recommend? What's the approach that you would take?
Okay, well, you're not a millennial, neither am I, but I think being on the mobile phone while watching the game in the stadium is completely normal to them. And I think that's something you just have to live with, because it's another data layer, right? It's just another data layer for them, and they're looking at stats. So there's an opportunity there. I think the more I go to large sports events, especially in the West, the more I realize it's like it's a total entertainment show. It's not just about the sports anymore that's happening on the field. It's about everything around the franchise. And there's a great opportunity for a brand or for anyone who wants to interact with the fan in the stadium through a mobile phone. And I think we can look at it and go, it's not pure, it's something, they should be watching the game, those tickets were expensive. Or we could say, that's life now. And, there's a great experience you can have watching a game and add to that experience at the same time. So I don't think it has to be one or the other, and I'm fine with that, and I'd encourage people to adopt that strategy of a multi-layer experience.
So looking at fans as active audiences within the stadiums is something that we could do more of.
I think you have to be pre-game, during the game, post-game now. There's no excuse not to be, always on around a fan opportunity around sports. I mean, it just surprises me actually how far behind the sports industry is in social when you think of Facebook calling a fan, right? Like it's almost like, how come sports is behind the curve here? There's nothing more natural than being a social fan for a sports team that I could imagine, yet you don't see a lot of sports organizations embracing it as well as the NBA does.
Oh, that's a good point. One of the panelists before was kind of talking about the ways in which to approach this, but let's go on to the challenge. We talked about having two brands, and not using your own brand in social media was brought up in the last panel. We talked about it in terms of how brands actually approach engaging fans in social media, and it's a challenge. What was the challenge you identified?
Well, first I'd like to just kind of go, I'd like to go with Ken's futurist point and go beyond there.
Okay.
If you think about it, the second screen is the first screen already, and it's going to be much more so. There's going to be about 2 billion people coming online in the next few years. The vast majority of those are going to use mobile devices first. The vast majority of those are sports fans who will never in their life go to see that team play. So if we're focused on the experience in the stadium, we're missing those hundreds of millions of fans of NBA and Manchester United and Chelsea and so on. And so those people's primary experience is on social media, it's on YouTube, it's on their devices, and it's their relationship with the other fans and with the club and the players that they love and the league that they love. So that's the primary relationship. And I think what's happened is, and that's already the reality. If you see the last panel, that's where they are. They don't even, this whole discussion about the TV in the stadium, I don't think really, I don't think they even understand that discussion, to be honest. So for the sponsors who want to be part of the sport and want to have positive brand association and have their messages come through, they need to get with that program. So my view is actually the marketplace for sponsorship now starts with social media. That's the first thing you need to think about. And then your strategy for in-stadium, the activations on the grounds, and all that stuff follows on from a key understanding of the core engagement strategy.
Because the two of the largest EPL markets in the world are actually out here.
Exactly.
Indonesia and Thailand.
Exactly. So I work with Premier League, #1 market Indonesia, #2 market Thailand. In fact, the most engaged market in the world right now is Thailand. So there is no choice. The Premier League, everything that goes out within 10 minutes is translated to 5 languages, Bahasa and Thai being 2 very important ones out of that. You don't have a choice now. That is just what you need to do.
Interesting. There are 820 million football fans in Asia, and there are 660 million fans of the NBA globally. Geraldine, what are you doing to catch up?
Well, that's an interesting point, because I actually agree with what Qais is saying. When you and I, we had that discussion early on, we talk about challenges, and the way we see it is much more an opportunity. The great thing that just was mentioned by Qais early on was, your touch point with the friend of the fan, which is not necessarily a fan himself or herself. How do you approach that person? And social media is providing us with a fantastic opportunity over there. So it's not a challenge, because we have those tools, we have those assets, we have the content, we have the videos, and the one we are producing, the one our fans are producing, the one our team members are producing. And so how do we leverage that to make sure that if you're not an NBA fan, but you happen to have a friend who is, and you are a part of his network, we can leverage this. That would be, of course, giving you game action that everybody has been talking about, so at least you're having at some point touched by that information. And also by everything else that does the ecosystem of the NBA, lifestyles, music, dance, mascots for the younger crowd. I mean, this is exactly where we're going to tap into, that fantastic, again, ecosystem that we have around our game to make sure we can attract you there and get you into the arena with us, whether it is online or whether it is in the stadium.
So doing an even more amazing job of activating fans.
Well, we're trying. We're putting things out there, and it's really a two-way street. The social media is also allowing us, to talk to people, but to talk to us. So whatever we are doing right or wrong, we have their immediate feedback on that, and we can definitely, readjust the needle right away. So yes, your question, absolutely.
Okay. John, you raised a point that it's not that every single sports fan is 100% active all the time in social media, that there are aspects of sports fandom that are not as active. What were you trying to highlight?
I think there's 2 ways I'd look at fandom. There's the fanatical fans, right? And that portion of fandom is extremely tribal. It's, I'm for my team, I'm for my player, and I'm even against your team, and I'm against your players, right? So I grew up in Los Angeles, I'm a Lakers fan. Nothing makes me happier than the Lakers winning a championship. The second greatest thing is the Celtics losing. And I will watch the Celtics. If bad things happen to the Celtics, I'm happy. So that's the tribalism of social and of sport fandom. And I think, we've seen, I think, more and more brands now start to tap into some of that tribalism. And I think a good example is EA with their Madden NFL 15 campaign. And they've done some work with us. And what we created basically with them is a GIF creator. And you can go in and pull different players from your team, put different messages across those players, different animations. You can taunt people, you can be happy about a touchdown, and then you can send those out to your friends. We've seen tremendous take-up of that. So, fans want to be involved. They're obviously, it's a two-way flow, and they want to even create, and they want to show their fandom by creating. So I think that's kind of one extreme pull. And then I think the other part is kind of capturing casual fans, right? And creating a place where casual fans can get more involved. I think it typically happens more often around big events that are, biannual or every 4 years, like the World Cup. You have, the World Cup's an event, right? Or the Olympics even. And tracking more casual fans into the flow and getting caught up in the kind of commentary that's going on in the social media stream. But I think a lot of that is still driven by the fanatics. And then they kind of share and draw their people in, and those people say, okay, I want to be involved.
Well, that's good. I think some of the challenges of sports social is that it's so immediate. It's of the moment. So it is sort of as it happens to be relevant, you must be real-time marketing. So I look at sports social as almost being content and real-time marketing personified. But that stuff isn't easy as it can. What kind of things go into a strategy around being relevant at such a timely moment?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the World Cup, for example, and how Adidas played that marketing game versus others, I mean, they were ready. Like they came with a game plan. They were prepared. One team's going to win, one team's going to lose. You can have a scenario for both planned in terms of images that you could put up, quotes you want to put up. And so real-time marketing, the dirty secret of real-time marketing is you need to come prepared. It's not just like, oh, let's put something up now. Oh, the lights went out. Let's get an Oreo cookie and dunk in the dark. I mean, a lot of work goes into that. Command centers are required. People sitting around a table thinking about what to put next in real time and then doing it seconds later. So a lot of effort goes into that, but the challenge is you have to be authentic. And you can take real-time marketing the wrong way. And we saw that in the World Cup. We saw that even in the unfortunate scenario where Robin Williams committed suicide. You saw one brand, Apple, do something quite tasteful. And then you saw a PR agency, which we won't name, do something which they thought was okay, but everyone pounded on them and said, this is inappropriate. You're actually using his death to extend your own name. And it was a very fine line. And so real-time marketing comes with risks. But this thing about being authentic is key in any real-time marketing effort. And what I see, in terms of athletes and sports teams, the ones who are doing it right, is they're authentic about it. And my favorite example is, I guess it's Kevin Durant from the NBA, where it was during the strike where he wasn't playing, and he was kind of like, I want to do something. So he tweeted out, hey, anyone playing a pickup game? Football, actually, not even basketball. And he ended up playing with a bunch of college students who tweeted him back, and they were actually joking with him, going, but can you catch? Are you any good? And he actually showed up and played touch football with these guys. That's really authentic. That's the dream. You always want to see your hero. Through social media, you actually can engage with this person and maybe even meet your hero physically or at least digitally.
Do you agree?
I think I do. Unfortunately, I really want to disagree. I'm going to have to agree. So we're one of the teams, or in certain countries we work with Adidas, so we're one of the teams that do that. And it's a tremendous amount of work because you've got rights issues, you've got legal issues, what you can say, what you can't say. That takes a lot of work to do, but when done right, it yields incredible results. We worked with the NRL for State of Origin in Australia, and that was maybe max sort of 30 people actually in the stadium with software like HootSuite running live, getting the things that people are talking about and talking back to them, right? There's ways and means for brands, clubs, individuals to have a sort of personality that makes sense. Obviously, for an individual, they already have personality, but for a brand, it can be really tough to work out what that is. Another great example I love is with Chelsea. I don't know if Adrian or Troy is still here, but Champions League game, Chelsea against Paris Saint-Germain, Chelsea started trolling PSG online. And they were sort of saying, Paris, can you do this? And they had the ball with Big Ben, then it was the ball with the Eiffel Tower. Then Chelsea had Will Ferrell with the cup, and then they had David Beckham, playing for PSG. So that was great, that was fun, people enjoyed it, they get into it. Brands can do that as well, but it is a fine line. One of the kind of cautionary tales, I think, was McDonald's at the World Cup with Fry Football. fried food is not good for you. It does not help you to eat fried food or, French fries and then go out and play football. So that kind of work, you got to be really careful of. And we did have a client that was very insistent that we should jump on the Luis Suarez bite incident. And we really felt that it was inappropriate. We really felt that they didn't have anything that was amusing or relevant. And frankly, this guy has a family and young kids, and it doesn't seem like the right kind of territory to go into. But other things where there's a humorous angle, you can go in there, and things which are tragic, you can go in there in a respectful angle. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm agreeing with Ken.
Can I say one thing? The bite one. If you actually did your history on him, he is a biter. Like, so if you were, he's what? Yeah.
He's a lover, not a biter.
Yeah. So if you are a prepared brand, you would know that there's always a possibility he might bite.
You got to say the word biter on stage.
Can I just ask the guys a question? Because
Love it.
they're agreeing with each other. I just want to ask them if they thought that, I'm sure Adidas optimized their efforts around the World Cup, but don't they think that, and this is really not as much about social, about general branding and guerrilla campaigns, but don't you think that Nike, took quite a bit of thunder away from Adidas, and they had a really strong campaign and a great theme, and they used their strength with athletes and using non-game footage, but creating animated footage, right, to create a super team, quite honestly, right? Don't you think that maybe, Adidas, as well as their execution was, they kind of got pipped a bit?
Yeah. Not according to Claude and the Google's one box, right?
And also if you go to my Twitter handle, you go like K Mandel, you'll see 47 stats that we analyzed around the World Cup, and I'm not so sure that Nike won it. Right? We looked at who won, who lost, and Delta definitely lost with a few remarks that were inappropriate. But I would look at those stats, 47 stats to.
If you look at the views, Nike did hands down pummel Adidas. The video views
What's
on
your
YouTube.
metric though? Like
But
views,
this is an interesting
or?
question. I think the measurement of the success of the commercial campaigns of the World Cup took place in social media this year. All right, so this argument between Adidas and Nike, which has been bouncing around, Nike looks at it and says, we put out 4 spots, they each got 250 million views, you put out 1 spot, you get like 65 million views. But I'm interested in the fact that we're not even measuring the television campaigns of the World Cup by measuring them on television. They're getting measured and argued about in social media. Please, comment.
I don't know about commenting on that. Sorry, James. I guess the question I would put back to the group is, it's not just about views, it's cost per view. So what did Adidas pay to be the sponsor? What did Nike pay for their campaign, right? So if you look at just absolute views and without looking at what they paid to get those views, you're kind of missing a big part of the equation. I think for probably what Nike put against it, relative to what Adidas did, I think that they probably are pretty happy with the way the campaign went for them.
Yeah. So I think if you go to the World Cup before, Nike trounced everyone. Right history that just trounced everyone. Risk Everything was awesome. It came out early. It did a great job. But what was interesting to me is that Adidas was in the game. I didn't feel like they were in the game at all 4 years before. And so to me, they both won. Nike and Adidas both won from, like I said, depending which metrics you look at, they both came really strong. A lot of the other people there, didn't really get the connection, didn't really get both those brands were part of the fabric of the World Cup. They were part of the discussion. There were interesting stuff that people were talking about, and that to me counts.
And in a very Nike way, Adidas claimed victory because Germany held up the cup. True story. Why does this matter? A recent study by IMG said that active social sports fans are 70% likely to activate either by sharing branded content or purchasing. Does that matter to you? Do you think about that, Geraldine? Do you guys talk about this in your strategy sessions?
Every morning going to the office. I mean, more seriously, it's, our mission is to grow the popularity of the game. Again, our core segment are millennial, and this is exactly where they are right now. So it's at the center of everything we do, and it's not new. Claude, earlier this morning, we were saying that we launched our channel on his platform in 2005, so we've been active for a decade now or more. One of the very, interesting point that was, mentioned in the panel earlier on, and that was also mentioned by Keith and Ken, is authenticity. And, when you come to global brand and global strategy, how do you relate that, globally, but also locally. So for example, we do have a global handle, which is at NBA. And then we have, per market, local handle. And it's not only about translating stories that at NBA will put out there. It's really about having, the finger on the pulse of what is happening locally. And then for that, we are, of course, relying, on local partners like Perform in Australia to get the story. Talking about Australia, you will say to me, but they are speaking English. Yes, but the center of interest will be different from the one we have in New York or in LA. So for that extent, if we want to be, even more so authentic or even more so, real time, replying to what our fans want to hear about or are talking about, or be a part of the conversation. Putting the at NBA on the game ball, which was, announced, and it was the second change on our ball this year, was clearly, a part of our strategy to be, in the middle of the conversation. It cannot happen without us being involved. Again, authenticity, we need to be, not too much directing and listening, but we have to be very, very much involved. So yes, it's at the center of everything we do.
Excellent. Brands in sports social can be authentic and memorable. Ken, you actually brought forward a couple of really great examples of teams that have their own brand, and then I'm going to ask them to throw something up behind us, which is the slide, which was the example that you brought.
Yeah.
Your point about some of these sports franchises are very personable. They're very unique. What caught you about that?
I mean, it goes back to what Geraldine just said, which is you have to talk in the voice of the fan. You have to get to the level of your fan. And if you're a brand that's interjecting yourself into that conversation, then you have to also talk in a fan-speak language. And that example was just very, it was an LA Kings example. And the LA Kings with their Twitter feed, sorry, that's hockey, although you wouldn't expect hockey in Los Angeles, but it exists there. They are just very quick, very witty, and they can talk in the tone of voice that they need to with their fan base. But the other thing that this sports team does so well is they actually, if they lose a game, they don't go, oh, well, too bad. They actually are very honest about it and almost humble and funny in a way where they got wiped out in the Stanley Cup playoffs 4-1. I think it was the Bruins who beat them, but I don't remember. And then the Pittsburgh Penguins got wiped out. They were playing in the semifinals as well, I think by Montreal, and it was they got 4-0. So what the LA Kings tweeted out after they lost, so they lost one day after, I think, the Pittsburgh Penguins did, and they said, "Hey Penguins, are you available for a drink tonight?" So that's what fans want to see. It's like, yeah, shit, we lost, but we're going to go out drinking. And my team is human. Or else they want to hear, we're going to crush them next time. But they don't want to be like the corporate speak of, blah, 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 blah.
Can we throw that slide up? Do we have the slide that we sent over earlier? This one. So this is an example of the LA Kings' social engagement with their fans directly live during a game.
Yeah. So, this is a specific fan has quite a few followers. And if you're laughing, it shows you that your age because you watched Wayne's World. But they knew to use the Wayne's World quote. And that was, this got retweeted a gazillion times.
So this was actually a woman who's a pretty well-known blogger.
Yeah, she's fairly, and she obviously just was having some fun to see if she was baiting them in a way because they asked a pretty, non-funny question, and she was like, "Oh, I like this guy," and they just, you only this is real time, right? You only have seconds to figure out what you're going to post here.
And quoting Wayne's World is something I know that we can do. Okay, before I open it up. We looked at a lot of different aspects of sports and social, and I think the whole thing about being yourself and being branding. But is there anything that you want to warn the audience about? Is there anything that you can think of? Because sports fans are just naturally unhappy. They are not happy people, and they sure know how to curse. Keith, any advice in terms of, when you stick your hand into the lion's mouth, what's your advice?
You got to be ready for that, right? And there is some experimentation, but sports all about banter. That's the core part of the experience. Really, is the banter, And if that's, if second screen is first screen, that really does become the core thread. It's the first thing you look at in the morning, and you want funny stuff. You want to, like you said, Ken said, you want to go with the opposition. You want to be with your team. But I think that the thing that I want to add to that is the best content is authentic to the brand itself. It's kind of relevant and in the language and the tone of voice of the audience, but also has a commercial intent. And that order is important. The commercial intent doesn't come first. You don't go straight in there to sell your product, but ultimately everything you do should have a clear business objective around it. That's why I'm saying sponsorship, to me, should really start with thinking, okay, what do we want to achieve? And social media and the banter and the memes and the fun is kind of the central experience. How do we do this in a way that's not tacky, that's not disrespectful, that becomes part of the fabric of the experience, but ultimately helps to drive our long-term business goals? It ain't easy, but that's what marketing is now. That's what we have to do.
All right, so can we open it up for a quick question or two? I don't want to keep you guys too much longer. I'm very excited to see the Williams team is here, and we want to get to them. But is there anyone who's got a burning question for this incredible panel? Oh, I promised I wouldn't do a Don Anderson and come out into the audience, but I hate it when no one asks
I can't believe this is happening.
Can I get a hand? Someone who's got a question for this panel? You all understand social media and you're ready to engage tomorrow. All right.
They're too busy twittering, probably.
Hey, Finn, how are you?
Good, thanks, James. I've even got a microphone.
Fantastic. I can go back to my chair.
I've always been really interested in the NBA's attitude towards YouTube. You seem to be really liberal with the way you allow fans to use the vision any way they like. Can you just give us a bit of insight into your strategy there?
Want me to start and finish?
Well, I mean, you should probably start and I'll follow up, but I don't want to answer for you.
Maybe. I mean, the channel is about, highlights and catching up on the action. So for our fan, again, if you haven't had the chance to see what happened live, you'll be able to go and go on that channel and be able to see the best action that happens during, the night time or in the morning time for the Asia time. It's being where, again, our audience is. We have a great session on YouTube earlier this morning, and the explanation of how they treated, major sports is exactly, at the core center of everything we are doing with that platform, making sure that we have a destination channel where people will be able to catch up on everything they haven't been able to see or being able to see it again and again and again.
I don't know if you're referencing just the overall NBA effort on YouTube or perhaps something particular to fan-uploaded content, but I think what's smart about the way NBA has approached it is we have a saying, let your fans be fans. And if you let your fans be fans, they can do some fantastic PR work for your brand. It's a little dangerous, but I mean, it certainly has its rewards. And I think that's something that the NBA has gotten very comfortable with, allowing their fans to be fans, leveraging YouTube where it's appropriate, right? Still managing the brand very closely. And I think that's just the nature of the social activity now. I mean, look, I don't think human nature's changed that much. When I was a kid listening to Dodger games, we used to call into the radio and then we'd, argue with the guy on the other side about what was going on. Just the tools are better. So we have better tools. We have many more avenues and platforms to communicate with each other, to communicate back to rivals, and it creates great opportunity. But you have to be, you have to be willing to accept that you're going to have. It's not all going to be really programmatic and go the way you expect it to go.
Okay. All right. I'm always really impressed and happy to be on a panel where every single person that I'm talking with is someone that I really look up to. You guys are fantastic. You've met some great people. As I say, for the audience, you now have an opportunity to engage directly with these people and ask questions and find out more. Trust me, the only thing for sure is that everything is going to change. Whatever you think is your strategy today, there will be a new platform tomorrow. Take the things that matter, like being yourself, embodying the brand, connecting with the fan, and activating. And please, let's thank our panel today. They've been fantastic. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.